The telegram arrived at the Double K Ranch on a blistering July morning in 1882, and Austin Keller knew, before opening it, that his life was about to change in ways he could not yet imagine. He stood on the porch of the sprawling ranch house in Awahi, Nevada, dust swirling around his boots as he read the words twice, then a third time. His mother had suffered a stroke while visiting her sister in Carson City. She was alive but needed constant care, and his aunt was too frail herself to provide it. Austin would need to bring her home and hire someone to look after her. At 26 years old, Austin had been running the ranch single-handedly since his father's death 2 years prior. The Double K spread across 3,000 acres of Nevada high desert, where cattle grazed among sagebrush and juniper. He had 20 men working under him during peak season, managed the books, oversaw the breeding program, and negotiated contracts with buyers from San Francisco to Denver. But caring for an invalid mother was beyond his capabilities, and he knew it. 3 weeks later, his mother was settled in her bedroom on the first floor, the parlor having been converted to accommodate her needs. Margaret Keller was only 52, but the stroke had aged her a decade. The right side of her face drooped slightly, and her right arm lay uselessly in her lap. Her speech was slurred but comprehensible, and her mind remained sharp, which somehow made her frustration all the more palpable. Austin had placed advertisements in 3 newspapers seeking a caregiver. Most respondents were unsuitable, either too young and flighty or too old and infirm themselves. Then a letter arrived from a Miss Molly Dawson, 24 years old, with experience caring for her grandmother until the woman's death 6 months prior. Her handwriting was neat, her credentials modest but genuine, and something in the straightforward tone of her letter appealed to him. He hired her by correspondence and sent money for the stagecoach from Reno. She arrived on a Thursday afternoon when the heat shimmered off the desert floor in visible waves. Austin had been mending fence on the north pasture and rode back to the house just as the coach pulled up. He dismounted and watched as the driver helped a woman down from the coach, and his first thought was that she looked nothing like he had imagined. Molly Dawson was tall, nearly 5'8", with dark auburn hair pulled back in a practical bun. Her dress was simple gray cotton, dusty from travel, and her face was sun-touched in a way that spoke of time spent outdoors rather than sheltered parlors. She had strong features, not delicate or dainty, but handsome in their own right. Her eyes, when they met his, were the color of honey in sunlight, direct and assessing. "Miss Dawson?" he asked, stepping forward and removing his hat. "Mr. Keller." Her voice was clear and warm. "Thank you for sending the coach fare. The journey was uneventful. I hope it was not too uncomfortable." He gestured to her single trunk, which the driver was unloading. "Is this all? I travel light. Everything I need is there." He appreciated the practicality. Too many women he had known fussed over endless trunks of unnecessary belongings. "Come inside. You will want to wash up and rest before meeting my mother." "I would prefer to meet her first if that is acceptable. I have been resting for days on coaches and trains. I would rather get to work." Austin found himself reassessing her again. "As you wish. Follow me." The ranch house was larger than most in the territory, built by his grandfather with timber hauled from the Sierra Nevada and local stone. It had been expanded over the years into a sprawling structure with 12 rooms, a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides, and windows fitted with real glass rather than oiled paper. His boots echoed on the wooden floors as he led Molly through the front hall to what had been the parlor. His mother was propped up in the hospital bed he had purchased from a doctor in Reno, pillows supporting her back, her good hand holding a book she could no longer seem to focus on. She looked up as they entered, and Austin saw her eyes widen slightly at the sight of Molly. "Mother, this is Miss Dawson, the woman I hired to help care for you. Miss Dawson, my mother, Mrs. Margaret Keller." Molly crossed the room with confident strides and took the chair beside the bed without hesitation. "Mrs. Keller, it is a pleasure to meet you. Your son has told me about your condition. I cared for my grandmother for 3 years after she suffered a similar affliction, so I have some experience with what you are going through." Margaret's eyes filled with tears, which surprised Austin. His mother was not given to emotional displays. "You are very young," she managed to say, the words thick and slow. 24, Molly confirmed, "but I have been caring for others since I was 16. My mother died when I was young, and I helped raise my 3 younger brothers while managing my father's household. Then when my grandmother fell ill, I moved to Reno to care for her. I may be young in years, but not in experience." "Your brothers?" Margaret asked. "All grown now and making their own ways. My father remarried last year, a good woman who does not need my help. So when I saw your son's advertisement, it seemed like Providence." Austin watched this exchange with growing interest. Molly spoke to his mother not with pity or forced cheerfulness, but with straightforward honesty and respect. His mother responded to it, her posture relaxing slightly. "Can you cook?" Margaret asked. "Yes, madam. Plain food, nothing fancy but wholesome and plentiful." "Can you read aloud without putting me to sleep?" Molly smiled, and Austin noticed how it transformed her face from handsome to genuinely pretty. "I have been told I have a good reading voice. My grandmother particularly enjoyed novels, the more dramatic the better." "I like novels too," Margaret said, and something that might have been a smile tugged at the left side of her mouth. "My son only reads cattle breeding journals and account books." "Someone has to," Austin interjected, feeling oddly defensive. Both women looked at him as if they had forgotten he was there. "We will manage just fine," his mother said. "You can go back to your fences or cows or whatever you were doing." He recognized a dismissal when he heard one. "Miss Dawson, your room is upstairs, second door on the right. I will have your trunk brought up." "Thank you, Mr. Keller." Molly had already turned back to his mother. "Now, Mrs. Keller, let me understand your daily routine. What time do you usually wake?" Austin left them to it and headed back outside, where 2 of his ranch hands, Tom and Miguel, were waiting with his horse. "That the new caregiver?" Tom asked, jerking his chin toward the house. "Yes, Miss Dawson from Reno. She looks sturdy enough, not like those delicate town ladies." Austin swung up into his saddle. "She will do just fine, I expect. Now let us get back to that fence before the cattle start wandering into the next county." But as he rode out, he found his thoughts drifting back to the house, to the woman with honey-colored eyes and the no-nonsense manner that had so quickly put his mother at ease. He shook his head, dismissing the distraction. He had hired her to do a job, nothing more. Romance was the last thing on his mind. The ranch demanded all his attention, and he had no time for complications. The first week passed in a blur of work. Austin rose before dawn, spent his days in the saddle or working with the cattle, and returned after dark to find his mother already settled for the night. He saw Molly only in passing, catching glimpses of her moving through the house, or hearing her voice reading aloud as he walked past his mother's room. On Sunday, he gave himself a half-day of rest and found both women sitting on the shaded porch, his mother in a wheeled chair he had not known they owned. "Where did that come from?" he asked, surprised. "The attic," Molly said, looking up from the sock she was darning. "Your mother remembered it was up there from when your grandfather broke his leg. I cleaned it up and oiled the wheels. It gives her more mobility." Margaret was looking out at the desert landscape with an expression Austin had not seen since before her stroke, something approaching contentment. "I was going mad in that room," she said. "Molly insisted I needed fresh air and sunlight. The doctor said exercise was important for recovery," Molly added. Obviously nothing strenuous, but moving about, using her good arm, even attempting to use the weak one, all of it helps prevent further deterioration. Austin settled into one of the porch chairs, suddenly aware of how tired he was. "You seem to know a great deal about this." "I read everything I could find when my grandmother fell ill. Medical journals, doctors' pamphlets, everything. And I corresponded with a nurse in San Francisco who gave me advice." Molly tied off her thread and set the sock aside. "Knowledge is the best tool we have against helplessness." "A philosophy I share," Austin said, and meant it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the wind through the sagebrush and the distant lowing of cattle. Finally, Margaret spoke. "You work too hard, Austin. You need to rest more. The ranch does not run itself. You have competent men working for you. Delegate more." "I delegate plenty." Molly stood and brushed off her skirt. "I will get lunch started. Mrs. Keller, would you like to stay out here or return inside?" "Out here, please. The breeze is lovely." Austin watched Molly disappear into the house, then turned to find his mother watching him with a shrewd expression. "What?" he asked. "She is a good woman. I am aware. That is why I hired her. She is also unmarried and quite capable. Mother, do not start. I am simply observing facts. You are 26 years old and have not shown interest in a woman since Mary Beth Henderson married that banker." Austin felt his jaw tighten. Mary Beth had been a mistake from the start, a town girl who wanted a wealthy rancher's wife life without understanding what ranching actually entailed. When she had seen the reality of the work, the isolation, the dust and heat and endless labor, she had fled to the arms of a Carson City banker who could offer her a house in town and a social calendar. Mary Beth has nothing to do with this conversation. Perhaps not. But loneliness has everything to do with it. You are alone out here, Austin. This ranch should have a family in it, children running through these halls. Your father and I always imagined grandchildren. I am aware of what you imagined, but life does not always conform to our plans, does it? You certainly did not plan to have a stroke." The words came out harsher than he intended, and he saw his mother flinch. Immediately, he regretted it. "I apologize. That was uncalled for. No, you are right. Life is unpredictable. Which is precisely why we should seize happiness when the opportunity presents itself, rather than waiting for the perfect moment that may never come." Before Austin could respond, Molly returned carrying a tray with sandwiches and lemonade. "Lunch is served," she announced cheerfully, and the conversation shifted to safer topics. But that night, lying in his bed with the window open to catch any hint of cool breeze, Austin found himself thinking about what his mother had said. The house was too quiet, too empty for a building of its size. He had grown accustomed to the solitude, told himself he preferred it. But was that true, or simply what he had convinced himself to believe after Mary Beth's betrayal? He thought of Molly, of her quiet competence and the gentle way she handled his mother. She was nothing like Mary Beth. There was no artifice to her, no pretension. She worked hard, spoke plainly, and seemed genuinely content with a simple life. But she was also his employee, and he had no business thinking of her as anything else. Austin rolled over and punched his pillow into submission. He had work to do in the morning. The last thing he needed was to complicate his life with romantic notions about the hired help. The weeks rolled into months, and autumn began to paint the high desert in shades of gold and rust. The cattle were driven down from the high pastures, preparations made for winter. Austin found himself spending more time around the house, as the outdoor work became less demanding, and that meant more time in Molly's company. She proved to be everything she had claimed and more. His mother was thriving under her care. Regaining some use of her right arm through the exercises, Molly patiently guided her through each day. The meals were simple but delicious. The house was clean without being obsessively so, and there was a warmth to the place that had been missing since his father's death. Molly herself remained something of a mystery. She spoke little of her past beyond the bare facts she had shared initially. She received no letters, had no visitors, seemed content to exist within the small world of the ranch. But Austin began to notice things about her. The way she hummed while she worked, always the same melody that he finally recognized as an old hymn. The way she stepped outside each evening just before sunset to watch the light change across the desert, her face peaceful and still. The way she laughed, openly and without reservation, when something genuinely amused her. One evening in late October, he came in from checking on a mare about to foal and found Molly in the kitchen, up to her elbows in bread dough. Her sleeves were rolled up, exposing strong forearms, and a smudge of flour decorated her cheek. She looked up as he entered and smiled. "You are just in time. I need someone to test the stew." "Where is my mother?" "Napping. The exercises tire her out, which is good. She needs the rest for her body to heal." Molly gestured to the pot on the stove. "Please tell me if it needs more salt." Austin washed his hands in the basin and took the spoon she offered. The stew was rich with beef and vegetables, perfectly seasoned. "It is excellent. You say that about everything I cook. Because everything you cook is excellent." She laughed and returned to kneading her dough. "You are easy to please. My brothers were far more critical." "Tell me about them," Austin said, surprising himself. He pulled out a chair and sat down, something he rarely did during the day. "You have mentioned them, but I know nothing about them really." Molly's hands continued their rhythmic work as she spoke. "James is the oldest, 22 now. He works for the railroad in Sacramento. Thomas is 20, managing a general store in Virginia City. And Peter, the baby, just turned 18 and joined the Army. They are good men, all of them, though I worry about Peter. He is too young and idealistic for military life." "You practically raised them." "After our mother died, yes. I was 12 and they were so young. Father did his best, but he was lost in his grief. So I learned to cook and clean and mend and manage a household. By the time I was 16, I was running everything while Father worked his freight business." She shaped the dough into loaves with practiced efficiency. "When he remarried, I was glad for him. Clara is a good woman, and he deserves happiness. But I also realized I had been living for others my entire life and had never considered what I wanted for myself." "And what do you want?" Austin asked quietly. Molly paused, her hand still on the dough, and looked at him. In the fading light through the kitchen window, her eyes seemed to glow. "I want a place where I am needed, not out of obligation or duty, but because I have something valuable to offer. I want work that matters, and I want peace." She resumed shaping the loaves. "I know those are simple ambitions, but they are mine." "They are not simple at all. Most people spend their whole lives chasing things they do not really want, never stopping to consider what would actually make them happy." "And you? What do you want, Mr. Keller?" He considered the question seriously. "To preserve what my father and grandfather built, to make it thrive, to not let their legacy die with me." "That is what you feel you should want, but what do you actually want?" The question cut deeper than he expected. "I do not know any more. There was a time I thought I knew, but I was wrong. Now I focus on what I can control, which is the ranch. That seems a lonely way to live, perhaps, but it is safe." Molly placed the loaves in baking pans and covered them with cloth to rise. "Safety is overrated, Mr. Keller." Some risks are worth taking. She left the kitchen to check on his mother, and Austin sat alone as darkness fell outside. Her words echoed in his mind. Some risks are worth taking. Was she speaking generally, or was there a message meant specifically for him? And why did the thought of her leaving, of the ranch returning to its former silence, fill him with such dread? November brought the first snow, dusting the desert in white that melted by midday but signaled winter's approach. Austin began spending more time indoors, working on the ranch accounts and planning for spring. This meant sharing the dining table with Molly and his mother for meals, and he found himself looking forward to these times together. His mother continued to improve, her speech clearer now, her right arm gaining strength. She insisted on helping with small tasks, folding linens or shelling peas, anything to feel useful. Molly encouraged this without pushing too hard, somehow knowing exactly how much to challenge without overwhelming her patient. "You have a gift for this," Austin told Molly one afternoon when his mother had gone to rest. "For caregiving, I mean. Have you ever considered professional nursing?" "I lack the formal education. Nursing schools require credentials I do not have." She was mending one of his shirts, her needle flashing in and out of the fabric. "Besides, I prefer the personal connection of caring for one or two people rather than the impersonal nature of a hospital." "You could have that personal connection in your own home, with your own family." The needle paused. "Are you asking why I am not married, Mr. Keller?" "Austin. Please call me Austin. Mr. Keller makes me feel ancient." He shifted in his chair. "And I suppose I am curious, yes. You are intelligent, capable, certainly not unpleasant to look at. I would think you would have had proposals." "I have had 3, actually." She resumed her sewing. "One when I was 18 from a farmer who wanted a free housekeeper and brood mare. One when I was 20 from a shopkeeper 40 years my senior who wanted a nurse for his declining years. And one last year from a perfectly nice clerk who wanted a quiet, obedient wife to manage his home and never challenge him." She bit off the thread and examined her work. "None of them wanted me, not really. They wanted what I could do for them." "That is rather cynical." "That is rather realistic." She folded the shirt and added it to the mending basket. "I am not opposed to marriage, Austin, but I will only marry for love, genuine partnership, mutual respect. I will not settle for less, even if it means remaining unmarried. Those are high standards, as they should be. Marriage is forever, or it ought to be. Why would I commit to forever with someone who does not value me as a person?" Austin found himself nodding. "Mary Beth valued what I represented, the ranch, the money, the status. But when she realized I came with all of that I was part of the package and the package required actual work, she chose differently. Then she was a fool." Molly said it so matter-of-factly that Austin almost laughed. "You do not know that. You have never met her." "I do not need to meet her. Anyone who would choose a banker's parlor over this magnificent place, over honest work and genuine purpose, over—" She trailed off, her cheeks coloring slightly. "Over what you have built here is clearly lacking in sense." "Over what I have built here," Austin prompted, curious about what she had been about to say. "The ranch," Molly said quickly. "It is an impressive operation. You should be proud." But Austin sensed there had been something else, something unspoken. The air between them felt charged, heavy with words not said. He opened his mouth, unsure what would come out, when his mother's bell rang from her room. "Excuse me," Molly said, practically fleeing the room. Austin sat alone, his heart beating harder than it should be. Something had shifted, some line had been crossed, and he was not entirely sure what to do about it. December arrived with a vengeance, bringing snow that did not melt and temperatures that plunged below zero at night. The ranch work became a matter of survival, keeping the cattle alive, the water troughs from freezing solid, the pipes in the house from bursting. Austin worked alongside his men from before dawn until well after dark, coming in exhausted and half-frozen. Molly always had hot food waiting, and she took to heating bricks in the oven to wrap in flannel for his bed. "You will catch your death," she scolded one particularly brutal evening when he stumbled and covered in snow and ice. "The cattle will die if I do not tend them. The cattle have shelters and each other for warmth. You are alone out there." She helped him out of his frozen coat, her hands brisk and efficient, into the kitchen. "I have water heating for a bath. You do not have to hush. You are half frozen and too tired to argue effectively." She steered him toward the kitchen where the big tub sat near the stove, already partially filled with steaming water. "I will get more hot water. You get out of those wet clothes before you freeze to the floor." She disappeared, and Austin stripped down to his union suit, too cold and tired to be self-conscious. By the time Molly returned with buckets of hot water, he was in the tub, the warmth almost painful as circulation returned to his extremities. "Here," she said, adding the hot water and handing him a bar of soap. "Wash up while I make you something to eat, and do not fall asleep in there or you will drown." Austin soaked until the water cooled, scrubbing away layers of grime and ice. When he emerged, clean clothes were laid out and a plate of roast beef and potatoes waited on the table. Molly sat across from him, mending by lamplight as he ate. "Thank you," he said finally. "You did not have to go to such trouble." "It was no trouble. Someone has to look after you since you clearly will not look after yourself." She tied off a thread and looked up at him. "You are working yourself to death, Austin. Even your men are worried. The ranch requires it. The ranch requires a living owner, not a frozen corpse." Her voice was sharp with worry. "Please delegate more. Trust your foreman to handle some of this. You cannot do everything yourself. My father did. Your father had your mother here to care for him, to insist he rest, to keep him human. You have no one." She stopped, and he saw her swallow hard. "You have no one to tell you when enough is enough." "I have you," Austin said quietly. "You are telling me now. And will you listen?" He wanted to say no, to insist he knew best, that he had to maintain control of every aspect of the ranch. But looking at Molly's worried face, at the dark circles under her eyes that suggested she had been staying up waiting for him these cold nights, he found himself nodding. "I will try. I will let Daniel take more responsibility. He is a good foreman." The relief on her face was palpable. "Thank you. Your mother worries too, though she tries not to show it. She has already lost your father. She cannot bear to lose you too. And you," the question escaped before he could stop it. "Would you care if something happened to me?" Molly's hands stilled on her mending. "Of course I would care. You are my employer and your mother depends on you." "Is that the only reason?" The silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire in the stove. Finally, Molly set aside her mending and met his eyes directly. "No, that is not the only reason. But I think we should not have this conversation when you are exhausted and vulnerable. When should we have it? I do not know if we should have it at all." She stood and gathered her sewing. "Get some rest, Austin. Things will look clearer in the morning." But sleep evaded Austin that night. He lay in his bed, warm for the first time in days, and thought about Molly's face when she had worried over him. About the way she had started calling him by his first name without him noticing the transition. About how empty the house would feel if she left. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, he admitted to himself what he had been avoiding for months. He was falling in love with Molly Dawson, perhaps had already fallen, and he had no idea what to do about it. Christmas came quietly to the Double K Ranch. Austin cut a small pine from the foothills and set it up in the parlor, and Molly strung it with popcorn and paper decorations she folded with his mother. On Christmas morning, they exchanged simple gifts. Austin gave his mother a beautiful shawl he had ordered from San Francisco and Molly a leather-bound journal with blank pages. "For your thoughts," he said as she opened it, "or recipes, or anything you want to record." "It is beautiful," she said softly, running her hand over the smooth leather. "Thank you." She gave him gloves she had knitted herself, the leather palms reinforced for ranch work. "They are not much," she said apologetically. "They are perfect." He tried them on and they fit as if measured. "How did you know my size?" "I mended enough of your clothes to have a general idea." She was blushing, which Austin found utterly charming. His mother gave them both handkerchiefs she had painstakingly embroidered with her good hand, the stitches uneven but heartfelt. "It is all I can manage," she said, tears in her eyes. "They are treasures," Molly assured her. "I will carry mine always." They ate a Christmas dinner of roast chicken and all the trimmings, and afterward sat around the parlor fire. Margaret dozed in her chair while Austin and Molly talked quietly, sharing memories of past Christmases, of family traditions and childhood dreams. "What did you want to be when you were young?" Molly asked him. "An explorer," Austin admitted. "I wanted to see the world, map uncharted territories, discover new places." "Why did you not?" "The ranch needed me. After my father died, there was no choice. This was my responsibility." "Do you resent it?" Austin considered the question honestly. "Sometimes, but mostly no. This land is in my blood. I belong here, even if it was not what I once imagined for myself. I think we all have to reconcile who we thought we would be with who we actually are," Molly said thoughtfully. "I certainly never imagined I would be unmarried at 24, working as a caregiver on a Nevada ranch. But I am happy here, happier than I have been in a long time." "I am glad," Austin said, and meant it with his whole heart. "I am very glad you came here, Molly." She looked at him, and something passed between them, warm and sweet and terrifying. "So am I," she whispered. The moment stretched, fragile as spun glass. Austin leaned forward slightly, and Molly did not pull away. But then his mother snorted in her sleep, startling them both, and the spell broke. "I should get her to bed," Molly said, standing quickly. "It has been a long day." Austin helped her settle his mother for the night, then retreated to his own room where he lay awake, replaying that moment by the fire. He had almost kissed her, and unless he was very much mistaken, she would have let him. The thought filled him with equal parts joy and terror. January brought a thaw, the snow melting into mud that made every task twice as difficult. The cattle began calving, which meant long nights in the barns assisting difficult births. Austin tried to delegate as he had promised, but some things required his personal attention. One night, he was helping a heifer with her first calf when complications arose. The calf was breech, and by the time Austin managed to turn it and pull it free, both he and the calf were covered in birth fluids and exhausted. The calf took its first shaky breath, and Austin felt the familiar rush of satisfaction at a life saved. He stumbled back to the house just before dawn to find Molly in the kitchen, already starting breakfast. She took one look at him and shook her head. "You look like you wrestled a bear and lost." "Breech calf. But we saved them both, mother and baby." "Good. Now go clean up before you track that through the house." He washed in the barn and returned to find food on the table and coffee so strong it could strip paint. Molly sat with him while he ate, and they watched the sun rise through the kitchen window in comfortable silence. "I have been thinking," Molly said finally. "Your mother has improved so much. Her speech is nearly normal, and she has substantial use of her right arm again. Soon she may not need full-time care." Austin's stomach dropped. Are you saying you want to leave? I am saying that the terms of my employment may need to be renegotiated. I was hired as a caregiver, but your mother is recovering. I could continue as a general housekeeper and companion, or I could seek another position where my nursing skills are more needed. Do you want another position? Molly turned to look at him fully. That depends. On what? On whether there is a reason for me to stay beyond my duties as a caregiver. Austin's heart was hammering so hard he was sure she could hear it. This was the moment. He could let her go, maintain the safe boundaries he had constructed around himself. Or he could take the risk, step into the unknown. There is a reason, he said, his voice rough. There is every reason. I do not want you to leave, Molly, not as an employee, not as anything. I want you to stay. Austin, I know I am not what you probably imagined. I am a rancher, tied to this land. I cannot offer you cities or culture or an easy life. But I can offer you partnership, respect, a home where you are valued for yourself, not just what you can do. I can offer you my heart if you want it. Molly's eyes were bright with tears. Your heart is all I want. I do not need cities or culture. I need purpose and partnership and love. I need to be valued as a person, not a servant. And you have given me all of that without even realizing it. Then you will stay. I will stay. But not as your employee, Austin. If I stay, it must be as your equal, as your partner, as my wife. The word came out before he could overthink it. Molly laughed, tears spilling down her cheeks. Are you proposing to me while covered in calf-birthing fluids and 3 days of beard? I suppose I am. Is that a problem? It is utterly ridiculous and completely perfect. She stood and crossed to him, taking his dirty hands in hers. Yes, Austin Keller, I will marry you. I will be your wife and your partner and your equal, and I will love you for the rest of my days. He pulled her into his arms, not caring about the dirt or the impropriety or anything but the feel of her against him. When he kissed her, it was like coming home after a long journey, like finding something he had not known he was searching for. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms around his neck, and for the first time in years, Austin felt complete. They pulled apart at the sound of applause from the doorway. His mother stood there, leaning on her cane but grinning widely. Finally. I thought you two would dance around each other forever. You knew? Austin asked, incredulous. Of course I knew. I am an invalid, not blind. You have been in love with each other for months. Margaret shuffled into the kitchen and settled into a chair. Now, when is the wedding? I hope you plan to do it properly. Mother, I just proposed 5 seconds ago. Which means you have a lot of planning to do. Spring would be nice. The desert flowers will be blooming and the weather will be pleasant. She looked at Molly. Unless you want a long engagement. I see no reason to wait, Molly said, her hand finding Austin's. We are both adults, we know our own minds, and we have already been living under the same roof for months. Why pretend to observe conventions that serve no purpose? I like how you think, Margaret said approvingly. March, then. That gives us 2 months to prepare. Austin looked between the 2 women in his life and realized he had lost all control of the situation. But looking at Molly's radiant smile, he found he did not care one bit. The next 2 months passed in a flurry of activity. Word of the engagement spread through Awahi and the surrounding ranches, generating a mixture of surprise and approval. Austin's neighbors had worried about him becoming a hermit after Mary Beth's defection, and they were pleased to see him moving forward with his life. Molly proved to be a practical bride, refusing to make a fuss over details that did not matter. She ordered a simple white dress from a seamstress in Carson City, arranged for the circuit preacher to officiate, and planned a reception at the ranch for their closest friends and neighbors. No fancy trappings, no elaborate ceremony, just an honest exchange of vows between 2 people who loved each other. Austin spent his evenings working on a surprise for Molly. He expanded the master bedroom, adding a sitting area with large windows overlooking the desert and built-in bookshelves for the novels she loved. He wanted her to have a space that was truly hers, where she could retreat when she needed solitude. "You are spoiling her," his mother said, watching him sand the shelves smooth. "She deserves to be spoiled. She has spent her whole life caring for others. Let someone care for her for a change. You are a good man, Austin. Your father would be proud." It was the highest compliment his mother could give, and Austin felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I hope so. I am trying to be worthy of her. You are worthy. You just needed to see yourself through someone else's eyes to believe it." The wedding took place on a bright March morning when the desert was carpeted with wildflowers. The ceremony was held outside, with the sweeping expanse of the ranch as their backdrop. Molly wore her simple white dress with orange blossoms in her hair, and Austin thought she had never looked more beautiful. As they exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other through all the trials life would bring, Austin felt a peace settle over him. This was right. This was what he had been searching for without knowing it. Not just a wife, but a true partner. Someone who understood him, challenged him, supported him. Someone who chose this life not because it was easy or glamorous, but because it was real. When the preacher pronounced them married, Austin kissed his wife with all the love in his heart, and the assembled guests cheered. The reception lasted well into the evening, with music and dancing and enough food to feed twice their number. Molly danced with Austin's ranch hands, with neighboring ranchers, with everyone who asked. But she kept returning to Austin, her hand finding his, her smile meant only for him. As the stars came out and the guests began to depart, Margaret hugged them both. "Be happy," she said simply. "You deserve it." "We will be," Molly promised. "Thank you for raising such a good man. Thank you for seeing past his rough edges to the heart underneath." Austin led Molly upstairs to their newly renovated room. She gasped when she saw it, turning in a slow circle to take in the bookshelves, the sitting area, the beautiful view. "Austin, this is incredible. Do you like it?" "I love it. I love all of this. I love you." She turned to him, her eyes shining. "I never thought I could be this happy." "Neither did I," he admitted. "I thought I would live my whole life alone, married to the ranch. But you changed everything." They came together in a kiss that quickly deepened, all the pent-up longing of the past month spilling over. Austin had never wanted anything as much as he wanted Molly in that moment, and judging by the way she responded to his touch, the feeling was mutual. Their wedding night was everything it should be, passionate and tender and utterly right. Afterwards they lay tangled together, Molly's head on Austin's chest, his hand stroking her hair. "I could stay like this forever," she murmured. "I hope you will. I hope we have 50 years of this." 60, she corrected. "At least, maybe 70, greedy woman." "Absolutely. I have found what I want, and I have no intention of letting go." Austin held her tighter, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his side. He had hired her to care for his mother, never expecting to find his own heart's desire in the process. But life, he was learning, had a way of surprising you when you least expected it. The first year of their marriage was one of adjustment and discovery. Molly moved seamlessly from caregiver to wife and partner, taking on the management of the household while still ensuring Margaret received the care she needed. But Margaret, stubborn and determined, continued to regain her independence. By summer, she could walk with only a cane, her speech was completely normal, and she insisted on helping with light household tasks. "I am not dead yet," she informed them when they tried to coddle her. "I can snap beans and fold linens and generally make myself useful. Stop treating me like an invalid." "Yes, madam," Austin and Molly said in unison, then looked at each other and laughed. The ranch prospered under their combined efforts. Molly proved to have a head for numbers, taking over the account books and finding inefficiencies Austin had missed. She also began raising chickens and established a vegetable garden that supplied their kitchen and provided surplus to sell in town. Her ambition and work ethic matched his own, and together they made the Double K more profitable than it had ever been. But the true joy of that first year was not in the work or the profits, but in the small moments of connection. Breakfast together before the day's work began. Stolen kisses in the barn when they thought no one was looking. Evenings on the porch watching the sun set over the desert. Nights in each other's arms, learning each other's bodies and hearts. In December, Molly told Austin she was pregnant. They had been married 9 months, and the news filled him with a terror and joy he had never imagined possible. "Are you certain?" he asked, his hand trembling as he placed it on her still flat stomach. "As certain as I can be. I have missed 2 courses and I am sick every morning. The signs are unmistakable." She covered his hand with hers. "Are you happy?" "Happy. I am terrified and ecstatic and completely unprepared. We need to hire more help for you. You cannot be doing all this work while you are carrying a child. Women have been working while pregnant since the dawn of time, Austin. I am not fragile. I know, but I cannot help worrying. You are precious to me, Molly. You and this baby both." She pulled him into a kiss, sweet and reassuring. "We will be fine. Women in my family are sturdy breeders. My mother had 4 children with no complications, and my grandmother had 7. This baby will arrive healthy and strong, I promise you." Margaret was overjoyed at the news of a grandchild on the way. "Finally! I was beginning to think I would never live to see it." She immediately began knitting blankets and small garments, her recovered hands producing tiny, perfect stitches. The pregnancy progressed normally, Molly blooming with health despite the morning sickness that plagued her first few months. She continued her work with only minor modifications, refusing to be treated as an invalid. By spring, her belly was round and prominent, and Austin found himself constantly amazed that his child was growing inside her. "What do you hope for?" Molly asked one evening as they prepared for bed. "A boy or a girl, healthy," Austin said immediately. "That is all I care about. Healthy baby, healthy wife. But if you could choose," he considered it, "a girl, a daughter with your eyes and your spirit, someone who will challenge me and keep me honest." Molly laughed. "You do realize daughters grow up to be teenagers who will drive you mad with worry." "I have years before I need to worry about that. For now, I just want to meet this little person we have created." The baby arrived on a hot August afternoon in 1884. Molly's labor was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. Austin paced the hallway outside their bedroom, listening to her cries and feeling utterly helpless. The midwife they had hired from Reno kept assuring him everything was progressing normally, but every sound of pain from Molly tore at his heart. Finally, just as the sun was setting, he heard a different cry. The thin, reedy wail of a newborn. He burst into the room to find Molly propped up on pillows, exhausted and radiant, holding a tiny bundle. "A son," the midwife announced. "Healthy boy, good lungs, all fingers and toes accounted for." Austin approached the bed on shaky legs. Molly pulled back the blanket to reveal a red, wrinkled face, eyes squeezed shut, mouth open in protest at being expelled from his warm home. "He is perfect," Austin breathed. "He is loud," Molly said, but her smile was pure love. "Here, hold your son." Austin took the baby with trembling hands, cradling the impossibly small body against his chest. The baby quieted immediately, seeming to sense his father's presence. Austin felt something shift inside him, some fundamental realignment of his priorities and understanding. This tiny person was his son, his flesh and blood, his responsibility and his joy. He would do anything to protect him, to give him a good life. "We should name him," Molly said softly. They had discussed names during the pregnancy, unable to agree on anything that felt right. But looking at his son's face, Austin knew immediately. "Andrew, after my father, Andrew James Keller." "Andrew James," Molly repeated. "It is perfect. Hello, Andrew. Welcome to the world." Margaret met her grandson an hour later, tears streaming down her face as she held him. "He looks like your father," she told Austin. "Same nose, same chin. Oh, he would have been so proud." The first months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Andrew was a healthy, hungry baby who kept them up at all hours. Molly nursed him while Austin changed diapers and walked the floor when the baby was fussy. They took turns catching sleep when they could, operating in a fog of exhaustion and overwhelming love. "No one tells you how hard this is," Molly said one night after Andrew finally fell asleep following 2 hours of inconsolable crying. "No one tells you how incredible it is either," Austin countered, watching his son sleep in the cradle he had built. "How just looking at him can make everything else fade away. True. Even when I am so tired I could cry, one smile from him makes it all worthwhile." They settled into a rhythm as the months passed. Margaret helped when she could, watching Andrew while Molly worked or giving them an occasional evening to themselves. The ranch hands were all charmed by the baby, taking turns holding him and spoiling him with hand-carved toys. Andrew grew and thrived, hitting each milestone right on schedule. When Andrew was 18 months old, Molly discovered she was pregnant again. This time, there was no fear, only joy. They knew what to expect, felt confident in their ability to handle another child. Their daughter was born in May of 1886, an easy birth compared to Andrew's. She arrived quickly, as if impatient to meet the world, and filled the house with her lusty cries. They named her Eleanor Margaret after both her grandmothers, though they quickly shortened it to Ella. If Andrew had resembled the Keller side of the family, Ella was pure Dawson. She had Molly's auburn hair, her honey-colored eyes, her determined spirit. By 6 months old, she was trying to crawl, frustrated by her own limitations. By a year, she was walking and getting into everything within reach. "She is going to be a handful," Margaret predicted, watching Ella pull all the pots out of the kitchen cabinet for the 3rd time that day. "She already is," Molly said, but she was smiling. "Just like her father." "I was never that determined as a child," Austin protested. Both women looked at him with identical expressions of disbelief. "You once spent an entire winter trying to tame a wild Mustang everyone said was unbreakable," his mother reminded him. "You nearly got yourself killed a dozen times, but you refused to give up. That is different." That was about not being beaten by a horse. And Ella's determination is about conquering her world. Same spirit, different application. Austin scooped up his daughter, who squealed with delight and grabbed his nose with sticky fingers. "I suppose you are right. God help us all when she is a teenager." The years flowed by, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and family. Andrew grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved the cattle and spent every moment he could with his father, learning the ways of ranching. Ella remained a whirlwind of energy and curiosity, equally comfortable helping her mother in the house or following her brother into mischief. In 1889, Molly gave birth to their 3rd child, another son they named Thomas Edward. He was a placid baby, content to watch the world with calm blue eyes, so different from his energetic siblings that Molly sometimes wondered if they had been switched at birth. Margaret's health remained stable, though the years were beginning to catch up with her. She spent more time in her rocking chair, watching her grandchildren play, offering wisdom and stories of their father's childhood. She passed away peacefully in her sleep in the spring of 1891, just shy of her 61st birthday. Austin grieved deeply for his mother, but he took comfort in knowing she had lived to see her grandchildren, had known the joy of family restored to the Double K. They buried her next to his father on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple stone marker that read, "Margaret Keller, beloved mother and grandmother, 1831–1891. She was happy at the end," Molly said, holding Austin as he cried at the graveside. "She told me once that you hiring me to care for her was the best thing you ever did, because it brought her the family she had always dreamed of for you." "I thought I was hiring a caregiver," Austin said. "I had no idea I was finding my future. Neither did I. But I am so glad we found each other." They stood together on the hill, their children playing in the wildflowers below, and Austin felt the rightness of it all. The ranch would continue, passed down to Andrew and Thomas when the time came. Ella would have her choice of anything she wanted to pursue, ranching or otherwise. The Keller legacy was secure, not just in land and cattle, but in love and family. The years continued to pass, bringing their share of challenges and joys. Droughts tested their resolve, hard winters took their toll on the herds, market fluctuations threatened their profits. But Austin and Molly faced each challenge as partners, their bond strengthening with each trial overcome. In 1895, Molly gave birth to their fourth and final child, a daughter they named Rose Catherine. She was a surprise baby, arriving when Molly was 37 and Austin had assumed their family was complete. But Rose proved to be a delightful addition, a sweet-natured child who brought joy to everyone around her. Andrew turned 18 in 1902, a tall, capable young man who could run the ranch as well as his father. He had inherited Austin's work ethic and Molly's practical nature, a combination that served him well. But he also had dreams beyond the ranch, ambitions to expand their operation, to try new breeding techniques and business approaches. Austin encouraged this, knowing the ranch needed to evolve to survive. Ella, at 16, was as headstrong and independent as predicted. She had no interest in traditional feminine pursuits, preferring to ride and rope and work alongside her brothers. Austin worried about her future, about finding a man who would appreciate her spirit rather than try to break it. But Molly assured him the right person would come along eventually. "She is like me," Molly reminded him. "She will not settle for anything less than true partnership and respect." And that is exactly as it should be. Thomas, at 13, remained the quiet observer of the family. He loved books and learning, and Austin suspected he might not follow in the ranching tradition. But that was acceptable. Each child should follow their own path, find their own purpose. Rose, at 7, was the baby of the family and thoroughly spoiled by everyone. She had Molly's auburn hair and Austin's blue eyes, a striking combination that would someday break hearts. But for now, she was content to play with her dolls and help her mother in the garden. On their 20th wedding anniversary in March of 1903, Austin and Molly stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching the sun set over the desert much as they had done countless times before. Their children were scattered about the property, each occupied with their own pursuits. The ranch was prosperous, their family healthy, their love as strong as ever. "You ever regret it?" Austin asked, pulling Molly close. "Giving up the possibility of a different life to tie yourself to this ranch and to me?" "Never. Not once." Molly turned in his arms to face him. "This life, this family, this love, it is everything I ever wanted and more than I ever dreamed possible. You gave me purpose and partnership and a place to belong. How could I ever regret that?" I am the one who should be grateful. You came here to care for my mother, and you ended up saving me. I was so lost before you arrived, so alone. You brought light and warmth and love into this house. You made it a home. We made it a home together," Molly corrected. "That is what partnership means. We built this life side by side as equals." Austin kissed her, long and slow and sweet, with all the love of 20 years of marriage behind it. When they pulled apart, Molly was smiling that same radiant smile that had first captured his heart. 20 more years?" he asked. "At least. I told you I am greedy. I want every moment I can have with you." They stood together as the stars came out, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life and a family and a legacy. The Wild West was changing, the frontier closing, the old ways fading. But here on the Double K Ranch in Awahi, Nevada, love still conquered all, family still mattered most, and two hearts still beat as one. As the years rolled on into the new century, Austin and Molly watched their children grow into remarkable adults. Andrew married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread in 1905, bringing new energy and ideas into the operation. Together, they began expanding the Double K, acquiring adjacent land and modernizing their techniques. Austin stepped back gradually, content to advise rather than direct, trusting his son's capable hands with the legacy. Ella surprised everyone by falling in love with a veterinarian who came through Awahi in 1906. Dr. Samuel Morrison was a quiet, educated man who recognized and valued Ella's intelligence and spirit. He had no interest in changing her, only in partnering with her to establish a veterinary practice serving the ranches of northern Nevada. They married in the summer of 1907, and Ella became the first licensed veterinary assistant in the territory, working alongside her husband with skill and dedication. Thomas, as Austin had suspected, chose a different path. He attended university in California, studying literature and history, eventually becoming a teacher. He married a fellow teacher in 1912 and settled in Sacramento, visiting the ranch regularly but building his own life according to his own dreams. Austin was proud of him for having the courage to forge his own way. Rose, the baby of the family, grew into a beautiful young woman with her mother's compassion and her father's determination. She surprised everyone by becoming interested in medicine, inspired by the care her mother had given her grandmother years before. In 1913, at 18, she left for San Francisco to attend nursing school, one of a new generation of women pursuing professional careers. Austin and Molly became grandparents many times over. Andrew and his wife had 5 children who filled the ranch house with laughter and chaos. Ella and Samuel had 3, all of whom showed early aptitude for working with animals. Thomas had 2 daughters who were bookish and thoughtful like their father. Rose would eventually marry a doctor and have 4 children of her own, though that came later. By 1920, Austin was 64 years old, his hair gone gray, his body showing the wear of decades of hard labor. But his mind was sharp, and his heart was full. Molly, at 62, still moved with purpose and energy, her auburn hair now liberally streaked with silver, her face lined but still beautiful to Austin's eyes. They sat on the porch one evening in late summer, surrounded by grandchildren playing in the yard. The ranch house had been expanded twice to accommodate the growing family, and the Double K now spread across 10,000 acres, one of the most successful operations in northern Nevada. "Did you ever imagine this?" Molly asked, gesturing to the scene before them. "All of this from that first day you hired me?" "Never. I thought I was just solving a problem, finding care for my mother. I had no idea I was setting in motion everything that mattered most. Your mother knew. I think she knew from the very beginning. She was a wise woman. I only wish she had lived to see all of this. I think she sees it somehow. I like to believe she is watching over us all, pleased with what we have built. Austin took Molly's hand, their fingers intertwining with the ease of 40 years of practice. I love you, Molly Keller. I have loved you since that first winter when you scolded me for working too hard and insisted on caring for me. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Austin Keller. You gave me everything I ever wanted, a purpose, a partnership, a home, a family. You gave me a life worth living. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson. Around them, their grandchildren played, their children worked, their legacy continued. The Double K Ranch would endure, passed down through generations, each adding their own contributions while honoring what came before. In the years that followed, Austin and Molly aged gracefully, surrounded by love and family. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary in 1933, a grand occasion that brought family from across the country. By then, they had over 20 grandchildren and several great-grandchildren, a family tree that spread wide and deep. Austin passed away peacefully in his sleep in the winter of 1935, at the age of 79. Molly held his hand as he took his final breaths, whispering words of love and gratitude for the life they had shared. She mourned him deeply, but found comfort in their children and grandchildren, in the legacy they had built together. Molly lived another 7 years, remaining active and engaged with her family until the end. She finally joined Austin in the spring of 1942, at the age of 84. They buried her beside him on the hill overlooking the ranch, beneath a shared headstone that read, Austin and Molly Keller, partners in life and love, together forever. Their story became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The story of how a cowboy hired a caregiver and found his soulmate. How kindness and hard work and genuine partnership built a legacy that endured. How two people from different paths came together and created something beautiful and lasting. The Double K Ranch continues to this day, still in Keller hands, still thriving in the Nevada high desert. And on quiet evenings when the wind whispers through the sagebrush, some say you can still feel their presence, the love that started it all, the foundation upon which everything else was built. It was a simple beginning. A telegram, an advertisement, a woman arriving on a stagecoach. But from that simple beginning grew a love story for the ages, a testament to the power of kindness, the strength of partnership, and the enduring nature of true love. In the Wild West, where life was hard and survival was never guaranteed, Austin and Molly Keller proved that the greatest adventure of all was opening your heart to another person and building a life together, one day at a time. Their children and grandchildren carried forward not just the ranch, but the values they had embodied. Hard work, integrity, compassion, and above all, the belief that true partnership meant facing life's challenges together as equals. The lessons learned from watching Austin and Molly's relationship shaped how each subsequent generation approached their own marriages and families. Andrew, in particular, took his parents' example to heart. He treated his wife as his father had treated Molly, with respect and genuine partnership. Together, they navigated the challenges of the Great Depression, keeping the ranch afloat when so many others failed, through cooperation and mutual support. Ella's marriage to Samuel proved equally enduring, their shared passion for helping animals creating a bond that lasted until Samuel's death in 1952. Even then, Ella continued their work, training young veterinarians and advocating for better animal care practices across the West. Thomas, though far from the ranch physically, maintained close ties to his family and instilled in his daughters the same values of hard work and compassion his parents had demonstrated. His letters home were treasured by the whole family, windows into a different world but grounded in the same fundamental truths. Rose's nursing career touched countless lives, and she often credited her mother's example of caring for her grandmother as the inspiration. She approached her patients with the same combination of competence and compassion that Molly had shown, and passed those values to her own children. The legacy of Austin and Molly's love extended far beyond their immediate family. The Double K became known not just for quality cattle, but for fair treatment of workers, for community involvement, for being a place where hard work was rewarded and people were valued. Ranch hands who worked for the Kellers often stayed for decades, becoming part of the extended family. In Awahi, the Keller name became synonymous with integrity and community service. Multiple generations served on town councils, school boards, and charitable organizations, always remembering that they had been given much and therefore owed much in return. As the 20th century progressed and the Old West faded into memory, the story of Austin and Molly remained relevant. In a world growing increasingly complex and impersonal, their simple story of finding love through kindness and building a life through partnership resonated across generations. The ranch house itself became a kind of shrine to their memory. Later generations preserved the room Austin had renovated for Molly, keeping the bookshelves filled with her beloved novels, maintaining the sitting area where she had spent countless hours reading and thinking. The master bedroom, where both their children and some of their grandchildren had been born, was treated with reverence, a sacred space where the foundation of the family had been built. Young couples in the family would sometimes spend their first night after their weddings in that room, hoping to absorb some of the love and strength that had permeated those walls. And many reported feeling a sense of peace and rightness, as if Austin and Molly were offering their blessing to this new union. The hill where they were buried became a gathering place for the family, especially during significant moments. Graduations, weddings, births, all were acknowledged with visits to the graves, sharing the news with the ancestors who had started it all. Children grew up hearing stories of their great-great-grandparents, learning about the kind of love that endures beyond death. In 1982, on the 100th anniversary of Austin's hiring of Molly, the family held a massive reunion at the ranch. Over 200 descendants gathered, spanning 5 generations, all connected by the love story that had begun a century before. They shared stories, looked through old photographs, and marveled at how one simple act, hiring a caregiver for an ailing mother, had led to such an expansive legacy. The eldest attendee was Rose's daughter, 92 years old, who had vague childhood memories of both Austin and Molly. She stood before the assembled family and shared what she remembered. Great-grandfather Austin was a giant of a man to my child's eyes, but gentle. He would lift me up onto his shoulders and show me the ranch, explaining everything in detail as if my opinion mattered. Great-grandmother Molly always smelled of bread and lavender. She would pull me into her lap and tell me stories, always with a lesson hidden inside but never preachy. What I remember most was how they looked at each other. Even in their 80s, even after all those years together, they would catch each other's eyes across a room and smile, and you could feel the love like a physical thing. That is what they gave us, all of us, an example of what love should be. There was not a dry eye among the assembled descendants. The youngest, a baby born just 3 months before, was held up as a symbol of the future, of how Austin and Molly's legacy would continue into generations they could never have imagined. As the sun set that evening, the family gathered on the hill by the graves. Someone started singing an old hymn, the same one Molly used to hum while she worked. Others joined in, voices blending in harmony, a tribute to the two people who had made it all possible. The Double K Ranch endures to this day, adapted for modern times but still fundamentally true to the vision Austin and Molly established. Sustainable ranching practices honor the land they loved. Fair treatment of workers reflects the values they embodied. Community involvement continues the tradition of giving back. And at the heart of it all, in that ranch house in Awahi, Nevada, the story lives on. The story of a cowboy who hired a caregiver and found his soulmate. The story of a woman who came seeking employment and found a home. The story of how kindness and hard work and genuine partnership can build a legacy that transcends time. Their love story, born in the Wild West of 1882, remains as relevant and inspiring today as it was then. Because some truths are eternal. Love conquers all, partnership creates strength, kindness changes lives, and the bonds we forge with others are the only things that truly last. Austin and Molly Keller sleep peacefully on their hill, overlooking the land they loved and the legacy they built. And their story, passed down through generations, continues to inspire and guide those who come after, a testament to the enduring power of love found in the most unexpected of places. The Wild West may be gone, but the values it forged in people like Austin and Molly remain. Resilience, integrity, hard work, and above all, the courage to open your heart to love even when it comes in unexpected forms. That is their true legacy, more valuable than any amount of land or cattle, more enduring than any monument of stone. They found each other across the barriers of class and circumstance, built a partnership based on mutual respect and genuine affection, and created a family that continues to honor their memory. And in doing so, they proved that the greatest adventure of all is not exploring new territories or conquering challenges, but opening your heart to another person and building a life together, one day at a time, with love as your foundation and partnership as your strength. That is the story of Austin and Molly Keller, cowboy and caregiver, husband and wife, partners and soulmates, whose love story began with a simple hiring decision and bloomed into a legacy that will endure as long as there are descendants to remember and honor what they built together.